For this exercise, you're going to need a wall, and you're at the moment will need no equipment, but at some point you might want to add in some weight. So what you're going to do is step forward and make sure your feet are underneath your hips. Just balance out your pelvis, so make sure your pelvis is stacked over your rib cage and your pelvis is over your feet. From here, you're going to make sure that when you drag one foot back, that you can balance quite comfortably on the one leg. But what we don't want to do when we balance is shift all of our weight over this side. So it's really important to try and keep your hips forward and they don't shift, okay? So you're going to drag one heel back and you're going to place your heel on the wall. So this is stage one. From here, so I've come like 1, 2 feet away from the wall. So 1, 2, and there's my third, all right? Just play around. Obviously your feet might be smaller or bigger than mine. I doubt it, I've got big feet. So I'm gonna drag my foot back and I'm gonna place my heel on the wall. I'll show you this side on in a second so you can see. From here, I'm then going to hinge at the hips. So try thinking about pushing the hips back, but as you do, I want you to drive this hip back and pull this hip forward. So it's a kind of to and fro, all right? Then from there, I've hinged at the hips. I can feel my glute nice and stretched and my hamstrings stretched. From there, I'm then going to stand up. So that's stage one. You can come back to that if this is too tough for you, okay? But what the actual exercise is this. You're going to place your foot against the wall, all right? So it's wall press. Now, remember I said about as you hinge, I want you to think about pulling your hip forward, this one, yeah? I also want you to press your foot into the wall. So as our hips go back, this hip goes back, this hip comes forward, the foot that's pressing into the wall presses. Okay, I know that's a lot to think about. Try not to worry about it. Just go with it, all right? So hinging at the hips, pressing the foot into the wall as hard as you can, pressing this foot down. So we're pressing both feet and then getting that hinge at the hips. Ribs are nice and in neutral with our spine. And then from there, we're gonna stand up. So we press, hinge at the hips, press, push, push, and then standing up. All right? Where this can go wrong is people will tend to, and I'll just put my foot like this, as they're coming back, they will overarch their back and flare their rib cage. We want to make sure that the ribs stay over the pelvis, so ribs are back. That does not mean we've crunched, okay? My shoulder's not forward. We're keeping the shoulders nice and neutral. Ribs are staying in line with your pelvis, and then you're coming up, all right? What we don't want to do when we come up is this. Okay, you don't need to over squeeze your glutes and push your hips forward. You literally just come up, squeeze to stand. Okay, I'll show you side on now what that looks like, and then I'll show you what it looks like to add in weight. Okay, so just to quickly recap, you're going to step a few steps forwards. So 1 to 2 to 3 steps forwards, depending on how long your legs are and your feet are. The main aim here is when you take your 1 foot back, you're going to make sure that you scuff it along the floor. Your heel then should land on the wall with your toes on the floor. This is your B stance, so you can always come back to this. So if having your foot against the wall feels too much for you and you feel like you can't balance, come to a B stance like this, all right? And you want to keep the heel up. Then from there, you're going to take that foot up the wall. Remember, we're not shifting our weight into the side. We're not dipping to the side. We're keeping all of our body weight over this one leg, but in a neutral fashion, not dipping to the side. We want to make sure that this ankle and this heel is in line with this knee, thereabouts, okay? What we don't want is the foot to be all the way up here and closing the chain, and we don't want it to be too open, all right? So have the foot kind of in line with the knee, and then the knee in line with kind of the other knee. It doesn't have to be exact, it can be a little bit further forward. What we don't want is for you to be so close that your knee's like this, yeah? The other thing to mention here is when you're standing on this one leg, as you hinge back, make sure that this knee, hopefully you can see it, this knee is soft, all right? So we're keeping it soft. What we're not doing is jarring it back. I'll just bring this knee up so you can see. Jarring it back like this, and we're not bringing it forward like this, all right? So this leg, this is the working leg. You're keeping your knee soft so that when you hinge at the hips, your knee stays in line with the ankle, okay? I'll show you. So from here, we're gonna scuff our leg or foot back like you put a dog poo on your shoe and you're wiping it off. From there, bringing the foot up. You can just have a little look back. Is my ankle in line with my knee? Thereabouts. Am I dipping into the side? No. Are my hips facing forward and my pelvis facing forward? Yes. From there, I'm hinging at the hips, so sending my bum back towards the wall, keeping my ribs nice and neutral. Then from there, feeling that stretch, and I'm going to feel it more in my right hand side, my working leg, and then standing up. using the power of the wall and the floor. I'm going to actually come forward a little bit more because I felt a little bit too close, so you can always adjust. My knee, this knee felt too far forward. That's better. Now, I'm not too fussed about how low my torso is going. I'm more fussed about getting my bum back towards the wall. But as I do that, I'm not squatting or coming down. I'm keeping my knees soft, hinging from the hip, keeping my ribs in line with my pelvis. And as I come up, I press into the floor and I press into the wall. If you want to add load to this, you grab your dumbbell or your kettlebell, whatever it is you're using, and I want you to load it on the side that your leg is working. So just for demo's sake, I'll use this leg now. So if I bring it back, make sure my foot is in line with my knee, make sure I'm not dipping to the side. From here, hips are going to go back. And now I've loaded this side of my leg. Taking my hips back, really focusing on that stretch in the glute, making sure I'm not flaring my rib cage, keeping my ribs towards my hips, my pelvis even. Nice click there. And then finally to mention, what I'm not bothered about is how far down the weight goes. The weight does not need to go down here. Notice how round my torso is now. We don't want to do that. Just focus on the length and the stretch that you feel in your glute. Once you found that kind of the hardest part of the stretch, you stand up. Found it there. Like so.